please hold on, and we'll be chatting real soon. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening for those of you that have joined us. Just to kind of get started, for those of you that are here, we'd like to ask that you introduce yourself. You make sure you click that unmute button if you're currently muted. Just introduce yourself and maybe let us know why you're here. Is there a particular area of the city that you're concerned about, or do you have a question that you're coming to the evening with, just so we can have a little conversation before we formally get started. And so I don't know, I'm having a hard time seeing the name.
Okay, I can. So let's start with Elizabeth. I'm gonna go ahead and plug you in to ask you to unmute. Let's see, not sure if it's taking there. Why don't we have Maria, could you ask Elizabeth to unmute?
Elizabeth should be able to unmute themselves. I've already asked them.
Okay, will she require translation for this period?
Well, let's see. Well, she may not be by, so we can turn to someone else. And we are having translation done. Edgar, Alex, if you we have someone on the Spanish channel, just wanted to double check to see if you are actively translating or if waiting for the formal presentation. If you are, then we might be having some technical glitches. But let's see if we can ask Raymond to unmute. And if not, if that doesn't work, I think I know a setting that might be causing. Oh, there we go. No, that's there we go. Raymond.
Hi, Raymond.
Just a citizen interested in what's going on. I have no agenda or anything. Just want to make sure I'm up to speed on things.
Great.
All right. Let's try Elizabeth again, just to see. And if Elizabeth, if you're having some issues or anything, please let us know. But it doesn't seem to be taking. So then we'll go. The other person we have here is the only name we see is iPhone. So we're going to go ahead. If you are on an iPhone and you're not named Elizabeth or Raymond, this is coming to you. And we'll see if they and if you do not wish to unmute. Oh, there we go.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, yeah, my name is Marta, and I just live in North Ontario, and I am part of a group of community citizens that is part of the Safety Routes Ontario Montclair School District and the community. So that's my interest in joining the meeting and get to know about the transportation and everything.
Great.
Thank you. All right, let's give Elizabeth one more try, and if not, then I apologize for barraging you with request to unmute Elizabeth, but just want to make sure it's not a technical issue. If we'll come back to Elizabeth if she wants to do that later on, but otherwise I think I can turn it back over to Kim and Brian.
Thank you, Colin. Well, we'd like to welcome everybody tonight to the Ontario Plan 2050 Update Open House office hours. This is our city team. My name is Kimberly Ruddens. I'm the principal planner here at the City of Ontario, and I am the project manager for the Ontario Plan Update. Our city team tonight includes our city planning director, Rudy Zeladon, as well as staff, including Thomas Gron and Robert Morales. And we're here to support any questions you might have. And also, we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to hear what's going on. In addition to that, we have our consultant team, Placeworks, led by Colin Drucker, who you've heard speaking earlier, as well as Brian Judd, who is the principal for Placeworks, and their staff, and we also have certified Spanish interpreters. So the format for tonight, the open house, is to include a brief overview of the TOP 2050 update and presented by our consultant Placeworks. And then it's followed by an open discussion where you're able to ask questions, share your concerns or insights on how we can move forward to 2050 in a sustainable way. We appreciate all your insights, any information you might have, and know that we are a touch point for you if you have any future questions while we go through this process over the next several months. I appreciate, as we're moving through this office hour, is that everyone's respectful and supportive of each other with our comments, and let everyone have an opportunity to share in a respectful way. So with that said, I'm thankful that you're all here, and we'd like to move forward now. And I'd like to introduce Brian Judd, who will move us through the overall format of the program, as well as give you an update of where we are with the TOP 2050. Brian?
Thank you, Kim. And just a quick reminder for everybody, we will be recording tonight's presentation. And so if you have friends that couldn't make it this evening, be sure to let them know that they can go to the project website, and you can see that on the bottom of the screen here. And they can check it out at their convenience. And if anybody's having any technical difficulties, please just make sure to drop us a message in the chat. So as mentioned before, we are live in Spanish as well. Real quickly, I'd like to introduce our interpreter, Edgar, and let people know how they can get on the Spanish translation channel.
Thank you, Mr. Judd. The following message will be repeating in Spanish. We are offering live interpretation in Spanish today during our session. To access our Spanish channel, press the interpretation button at the bottom right corner of your screen, where you will see a globe icon. You can choose the icon and choose the Spanish channel. If you're joining via Zoom smartphone app, select your language by clicking More, or the three dots at the bottom right corner of your screen. Select Language Interpretation and choose Spanish. Bienvenidos, estamos ofreciendo interpretación en vivo y en directo durante esta sesión. Si usted necesita interpretación en español, oprima el botón de interpretación al pie y a la derecha de su pantalla Zoom, donde usted verá el icono de un globo terráqueo. Oprima el icono y seleccione Spanish o español según su formato. Si usted está uniéndose a nosotros vía Zoom en su teléfono inteligente, seleccione los tres puntitos al pie y a la derecha de su pantalla, presione Interpretación de idiomas y elija Spanish o español según su formato y presione Listo. Muchas gracias. Thank you, Mr. Judd. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Edgar. Okay, if you have any comments or questions during the presentation, we'll address as many as we can during the Q&A portions of the meeting. We might be able to address some of them quickly, either via chat or we can interrupt the presentation if necessary. To ensure that we can answer as many as possible tonight, to facilitate a bilingual process, we will be taking comments and questions through that chat function in both languages. If you are joining us through your tablet or smartphone, please make sure you check that More button on the screen to get to that chat function. Just real quick on some of the meeting protocols. Once again, just please make sure you mute yourself if you haven't done so, unless you're called on to speak. Please be aware whether or not whether your webcam and microphone are turned on throughout the evening, especially when you're talking. And once again, please use the chat feature if you do have any technical issues, and our staff will help you out. So tonight we'll be providing a very brief overview of what the Ontario plan is and what it's all about. We'll also review some of the things we've heard thus far from the community. And then we'll launch into the main part of the meeting, which is really to get an open dialogue with you and to make sure that the city consultant team can hear what's on your mind, what concerns you might have about the plan, and provide any answers to your questions. So the Ontario plan is essentially a framework for how the city makes decisions, particularly as they relate to how Ontario will grow in the future, how certain areas will be preserved or enhanced, and how other areas may change. It contains goals, policies, and implementation actions that help city staff, decision makers, the general public, developers, investors, and other agencies outside of the city understand where the city's going. It helps convey the city's priorities for improvements and investments, and how the city may respond to opportunities or unforeseen regulatory, environmental, or economic changes. It's a document that you can easily view on the city's website. The previous link will take you there. You can find it. You can find the current plan, which was adopted back in 2010, a fact sheet about the project, some web maps with some information about the different areas of the city, and some information on key topics that we're covering as part of the update. And you can find a recording there also that provides an overview of the update effort thus far. And the main reason we're revisiting the 2010 plan is because in part there are some new state laws that have taken effect since the current plan was adopted. In 2016, for example, there was environmental justice legislation that was passed in California. So we want to make sure that we're looking at the city's current health-related policies and goals and augment them so that they address both new conditions and state law regarding environmental justice. There's also been some new state law on safety, particularly as it relates to the increased risk of exposure to changing climate conditions, bad weather, hazardous conditions. So we'll be looking at strategies to better adapt to these changing conditions and strengthen the city's resiliency in the face of these changes. Essentially, we'll be looking for ways to ensure that the city is able to bounce back economically, socially, and through enhancements to the physical environment in response to these disruptions. And then there are some new conditions and some new investments that the city and others have made, for example, with regard to mobility. The ability, and that's mobility is the ability for people to move around the city and the sub-region, whether that's by car or alternative transportation like biking, walking, or riding transit. So the city's opting to update its policies to reflect these new conditions and investments, including the city's recently adopted alternative transportation master plan. And another primary reason the city's revisiting the Ontario plan is to take into consideration new conditions in the market, in the local, regional, national economy, and investments being made by the private and public sectors. Obviously, the last few years have been very tumultuous and difficult and have really created a big impact on how people develop their properties and what types and spaces get developed. In particular, we'll really need to look at how the office, hotel, and retail markets have fundamentally changed. And we want to make sure the city positions itself to respond to these changes and develop a land use plan and economic policies that help the city sustain prosperity and continued growth into the future. So the city has been continuously engaging the community, and we wanted to make sure to incorporate in this presentation what's already been done, so you're aware that this has been something that the city's been working on for a while in terms of getting input on different issues in the city. This timeline shows what has happened essentially since 2018, whether that's the focused outreach on downtown, active transportation, designing the great park in the Ontario Ranch in the southern part of the city, looking at parks and recreation throughout the city, and really a big focus on affordable housing and housing assistance. And in late 2020 and into last year, the city began the Ontario Plan update process, based in part on those prior engagement efforts. And so real quick, this slide is obviously in English. We have a Spanish version of this slide, so if you want to go back and look at it in more detail later, you can. This will be up on the website. And the same thing for this slide following, there's a Spanish version of this. But this is a slide that shows where we are in the planning process. I realize there's quite a bit of information on here, but if you focus first on that red arrow, you can see where we are today. That is, we're continuing to get input from the community. We're finishing draft changes to the policy portion of the Ontario Plan, which is referred to as the policy plan, and finalizing the analysis of the potential environmental impacts of the plan. So you can see on the slide there the reference to the four-letter word CEQA, C-E-Q-A, and that stands for the California Environmental Quality Act, which requires the city to evaluate these potential impacts. And here that will be done via an environmental impact report, or EIR. You'll probably hear that term if you follow the process. We're also updating the city's Community Climate Action Plan, also known as a CAP, C-A-P. So at this stage, we're continuing to get input from the community for consideration of the plan. We're looking to wrap up the draft plan for public review soon, in the coming months. And then we'll be looking towards adoption by later this summer. And if you look to the right side of the slide, you'll note that we'll be doing some additional work after adoption of the policy plan piece of the Ontario Plan. And that's going to include implementing actions for the plan, finalizing zoning standards that result from changes in the plan, updating the web version of the plan to reflect all of these changes that we'll be talking about. And then also to establish a tracking and feedback system. And that's going to allow the city to track the progress of the plan over time. And this will allow the city to make small iterative adjustments to the plan over time as circumstances change, without having to do these more comprehensive and at times costly overhauls of the plan. And once again, here's the Spanish version of that, and you'll be able to peruse that at your own leisure after the meeting. And then this is a summary of some of the information that we've heard so far through these various engagement efforts. On housing, we are hearing that people are interested in a greater variety of housing types, more attainable and affordable housing products, and opportunities to achieve home ownership and build wealth for a broader range of the community. And from others, we've heard that they would like to see parts of the city become more walkable, safer, and cleaner. And some have expressed a desire for more affordable rental opportunities. We also hear that residents would like to learn more about how the city gets the word out on various community programs so that more people are aware of them and options for them and what the city has to offer. And on the topic of safety, there has been some input on improving how safe people feel at or around various parks in Ontario, and others have expressed concerns about safety on the roads, whether you're driving on them or biking along or walking along them. And we've also heard that people are concerned about roadway safety near schools as well. We've also heard that people are interested in or want to talk about how to address warehousing and related truck traffic and air quality impacts. And others would like to see parks, trailways, and walking facilities. They like to see those expanded or enhanced throughout Ontario. Some were particularly focused on how to improve the connections between residential neighborhoods and nearby commercial shopping areas and parks without having to drive. We've heard from some residents that they are concerned about right to farm issues, and others have expressed some interest in hydrogen fueling stations. So we did a survey on the topic of environmental justice, and we had the survey conducted between July and September of last year. We had a little over 100 responses. A large majority of respondents expressed concerns about air pollution. Some reported concerns about illegal dumping and storm drains. And similar to that one, we had a similar sized portion of respondents that cited a need to expand the nutritional food purchase assistant effort in the city. And the top priorities, if you look at the orange box on the right side of the screen, when we asked them what they would really like the city to focus on, they said they talked about trying to minimize or prevent the impacts from heavy industrial uses, wanted to expand park and open space opportunities throughout the city, and they wanted to see more information distributed about public health conditions. Sorry. And here's some additional information that we gleaned from the environmental justice survey. I'm just going to bring all the information up here at once so I don't miss anything for translation purposes. Roughly half of the respondents indicated that they spend more than half of their income on housing. And in housing terms, this is considered an undesirable condition, a condition of severe overpayment. And so the goal is really to spend 30% or less of your household income on housing. And that's really what is considered affordable. A little over a third of the respondents expressed concerns about safety at Ontario parks and recreation centers. And about half stated they didn't feel they could effectively influence public policy related to their concerns. And these topics that I just mentioned are essentially the cornerstone of environmental justice legislation. One of the reasons we asked about these things is to address the city's objectives of improving existing conditions, reducing potential hazardous situations and environments, and improving stakeholders' ability to participate in that civic process to help improve their communities. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back to Kim, and she's going to kind of begin the dialogue with you folks to find out more about your concerns or questions that you might have.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that overview, and hopefully everyone on the call is able to understand where we are right now. Let me put some context to this. We are currently preparing the environmental impact report and updating the policy plan, and we anticipate, or we are striving for a May 9th public release of those items. So we're working to finish up all the analysis so the public will have a full spectrum of all the different issue areas that CEQA addresses in order for environmental compliance. So with that said, I just wanted to put in context, this is more of a discussion. We may not have all your answers tonight, but we will follow up. So with that, I'm wondering, does anyone have a question, or should we start in the row, or would you like to raise your hand?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
How would you like to do that?
If you have a question, please go ahead and show it by raising your hand. Or if you are having any sort of issues, just tell us in the chat. We've heard from at least one person a desire to speak about safe routes to school, but we have here's a side. I believe that is the person who is speaking to us now. So I'll go ahead and ask you to unmute. You should be able to unmute yourself. There we go. And could you say your name again, please?
Yes,
Marta?
yes. I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I was one of those citizens that last year attended the meetings, and I would like to know if you guys are gonna open the survey again to the community, because I'm just seeing that only 108 people answered the survey, and last year what I noticed is that the only way that we were able to know about the survey was through the social media. And now, this year, we received the information about these meetings on our water bill. So are you guys gonna try to open again the survey so more people participate? Because Ontario has like 170,000 citizens.
Yes, and thank you. We appreciate your comment. I agree. We have been doing outreach for the survey over a 3 months period. We did not do it in the water bill. We did social media. We did it in the all the rec centers. We also did a flyer at the rec centers, as well as a poster at all the recreation centers. And we did do at the council meetings and announced it there. And Colin, where else did we announce it as well? Besides the senior centers, City Hall, we did do as part of the CHIA group. They went out door to door and handed out flyers in the neighborhoods throughout the downtown and the greater area in the city. So with that, am I missing anything else where we have done outreach on the survey?
Yeah, you filled in the gaps that I was gonna speak to, but yeah, it was a fairly short 3-month period. So it's kind of an intense attempt to get a pulse from the community rather than a comprehensive survey. But I could imagine that implementation going forward would include some survey activity.
Right, we would do more survey activity, and also we also had it on our website as well. And we did noticing out from our website, our city website, and our Channel 3 site. And also we posted at City Hall. We did not do it in the water bill. We did this outreach in the water bill. As for opening up the survey again, I know we will probably have some type of survey being done in the future, but at this time, we're not anticipating reopening the survey. But at the same time, if you wish us to come out and talk to your group about the survey and take more information from you during this time period, we're willing to do that as well.
And Kim and Martha, there was also, Hallie was reminding me, there was also advertisement of the survey at pop-up events and concerts in the park.
Yes, correct. I know that it's with social media, we had also a wonderful push in that arena as well. So Marta, how would you like us to move in the future? What are your recommendations? Because I agree with you. I was hoping I'd get 10,000 to 20,000 at least. So help us get the word out. What would work more efficiently? How can we improve?
Yeah, like I say, I noticed when we did it last year, the only way that I see it was through your the City of Ontario Facebook page. So I share all over the groups and everything. But I think the best way to reach out the community or the citizens of Ontario is by sending it on the water bill, because we all receive the water bill.
Okay.
And like it's I think that's the best way, because that's the only place that I fit.
Okay. Do you have other
online?
do you have other community groups that we should try and at least go out and have conversations with? that you would recommend us to move forward?
To me, I'm not out that much because of my job, but if
Mhm.
you guys would like to open the survey by any chance, please do it on the water bill and
Okay,
for the
okay,
community. That's the best way to reach everyone in the city.
okay, fantastic.
I appreciate that.
Okay. And what else? What else? Do you have any other insights on how else we can improve our outreach?
To be honest, I know that the only things that the community get together is the big events like the concerts at the park, like you said, during
Okay.
the summer.
Uh-huh.
But besides that, there is no other way
No
that I
other.
see. Maybe at the libraries where the families take their kids.
Uh-huh.
That's the only, like for me, when we go out, it's at the
Mhm.
library.
Okay.
Or like you said, the concerts at the park. But besides that, there is no other events in the city.
Mhm.
Like a lot of people goes there.
Okay, good, good.
Well,
Eh.
maybe outside the supermarkets, we all go buy groceries.
Well said.
Or
Okay.
or contact the local churches, and
Mhm.
they can like put up the flyers over there at the church. That's where
Uh-huh.
the majority of the citizens go as a family.
Mhm. And for the libraries and the parks, we were able to provide information there. And at one point, we went to certain establishments, commercial establishments, to ask if we could provide flyers. But we're not, and it's at their discretion. So that I appreciate all your insights, and also, how we can be more effective in our outreach. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And then I think, Marta, were you, I believe my memory isn't bad enough that I've forgotten already, but you were talking about asking some questions on safe routes to school?
Yes, I am part of this group that is the safety roads to school.
Mhm.
And we are part of the working with the schools, the Ontario Montclair School District, and also with the city.
Mhm.
And yes, we have seen a lot of improvements outside the schools, and we want to thank you for that because we're seeing them, and I know that you guys are working on it.
Mhm. And we are, and thank you, Marta. I'll make sure to tell staff about that. It's always good to hear that, the work that we're doing is really making impact in the neighborhoods. That's really critical for us. I think one thing too is we're working to the next cycle 5. There are constant cycles, and we have to compete for those funds. So with that, I know our transportation department is working hard to make sure we are in the best positioning to move forward with getting that grant money to improve more routes to school. So I appreciate your input, and hopefully the next time we're moving forward in our outreach efforts for the ATP cycle, we'll tap on you to help us. Thank you.
Okay. And Marta, if you don't have any questions right now, you can go ahead and lower your hand, and then we'll entertain questions from others. If you I see you've lowered your hand, so thank you. If you feel free to raise it again, we can call back on you. For those, we had somebody just join us. We went through a brief overview and presentation about the Ontario plan. Right now, it's the kind of open question session of the overall meeting. So if anybody else has any questions that they'd like to ask, go ahead and please raise your hand. And if you cannot raise your hand, or you're having any issues, feel free to send a message in the chat, and we'll help you out. If not, we can talk about some other issues or share some information, and I'll turn it back over to Kim to guide us on that.
Thank you, Colin. Well, we're here to hear from you, hear your comments and questions. And if you have any, please share them, because this is your access to myself, who's in charge of getting the general plan update through the process and completed with our staff here and our experts in the area, PlaceWorks in subject matter. But with that, if no one's not raising their hand, Brian, do you think we could go through the mobility? We've done story maps, and I hope all of you know, we really encourage you to go to our website, and it's TOP 2050 update.
Brian,
Or
you
you
can,
can-
you can stop sharing and I'll share my
Okay,
screen.
thank you. But please go there. We have a tremendous amount of information to share with you about the process, what the Ontario plan is, which is our general plan, and it's our guide. It's a vision and our guide to grow to 2050 and what will look like, what will it look like in that area. And so Colin has put this up. I encourage you to go here. We try to keep it updated weekly on what's going on. We always put what's new. It tells you, like tonight is our virtual office hours. And then we move down and we give you, how to get on the Zoom call, which all of you are experts at now. And then we talk about the different areas, resiliency. And the story map is really condensing these large 100 to 200 page detailed analysis of these issue areas. I call them issue areas. And then it condenses into what this means, because our city and all the cities in California have legislations that we have to follow, and resiliency is a new mandate or law that we have to follow in preparing our general plan. So this is why we have a resiliency story map, because it's, and I think, should we start there, Colin, you think, resiliency? So what's important about resiliency, it's all about how we're going to be resilient as the climate changes. It is a major factor, as we've had experiences already with intense storms, we've had wildfires, we've had droughts, we're at a water shortage. We're starting on that. I don't know what they actually call it right now. But this is resiliency, is the city has to look at, as part of the general plan update, how we're going to adapt and move forward to adjust and find out how we move through this and keep our city whole and sustainable throughout these ups and downs while we adjust to this new normal. So it goes through all the state legislation, and it gives you the real big idea of all the legislation that's driving how we address these climate related hazards as a city. And so as you can see, we go from agriculture, pest disease, air quality, drought, extreme heat and warm, flooding, human health hazards, severe weather, wildfire and smoke. And all of these related hazards are analyzed at how much risk we have, how susceptible we are to these disruptors, and then how we can bounce back or design things so they're not so much of an inconvenience to our communities. So if we go down a little bit more, Colin, if you would, please.
And just to let you know, Kim, and you can obviously finish this. It looks like Raymond was submitting questions, but they weren't reaching the right person. So we do have some questions from Raymond.
Okay.
You get to check in.
So let me just finish up, and Raymond will get right to you. It goes through all the different hazards and the susceptibility we have with all those hazards. And then it talks about what we're doing in our plan with our policies, how we're going to address this throughout the next season, the next year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years. This is a good broad update of what we're talking about when we move into the climate action plan. So the climate action plan addresses these vulnerabilities, which are the hazards, and then how we adapt to it. And how do we adapt to it is really how we do our budgeting for future community improvement projects, or how we want to spend our money as a community in order to offset these disruptors or vulnerabilities. So this is just one of the story maps that we've put together in order to make it more digestible, because what on the other side of this is hundreds and hundreds of pages of data and analysis. And then we roll this all up so we can have bite-sized pieces so we can understand it. So I encourage you to come see our story maps. They give you the broad understanding of what's going on and how we may move forward in riding through the ups and downs, and what we're legislatively required to do. Like for that is the hazard mitigation plan is required by law for cities to prepare. So please take a moment when you have time and look through them. They're pretty easy. They're graphic heavy. So it just tells you what the points are. And so I highly encourage you to look at our story maps. With that, I believe, Colin, you mentioned something about.
Yeah, so Raymond has some questions,
Raymond.
and then we also
Okay.
were able to communicate with Elizabeth, who's having a little trouble on some things. So we have a comment from her after that. So let me see if I can get Raymond. I'm going to ask you to unmute, Raymond, and you should be able to. There you go. Let's see.
I had two questions, and one of them you were just sort of talking about. What role does the planning department have in judging whether to proceed with housing and other water intensive uses in view of the fact that water rationing seems to be on the horizon?
So there's two parts to that. And one part is about building more housing, correct, Raymond?
Yep.
And then the second part is about the water shortage. So the first part about housing is that we're required by law to build a certain amount of, or to have the capacity to build a certain amount of housing. And it's called the Regional Housing Needs Assessment. And that is all about housing and housing folks. The other part of that is that we have a municipal water company that is required by law to ensure that we have enough water to run our city. And so there is an important factor here that I would agree with you, like we don't have any water, we can't build. We are building houses that are complementary or in sync with the amount of water we have available and we will have available in the next coming 2 to 3 to 5 years. And so it seems counterintuitive that we're building houses with a water shortage, but we are required by law to show that we have water available, and we do a water assessment each project that comes in to ensure that we have water capacity through the horizon year. So it's not that we build houses without looking at all the infrastructure that's needed to build it. And that's part of the general plan update. When you go to the infrastructure section, it will talk about the water, not only the infrastructure of building it, or water availability. So it's hand in hand.
And I'd add, Kim, that there are some safety measures in the form of some state laws and legislation that essentially requires projects of certain sizes to prove that they have the water prior to being approved by the city. And then the city also, along with the water agencies, plan and reevaluate water supply at least once every 4 to 5 years to reassess what the demands are and what should be assigned or attributed to for growth, and then also to look at water shortage contingency planning. And what if a severe multi-year drought were to occur? Obviously, what's kind of leading right now seems to be headed in a severe direction, and people are already talking about measures to take. But I think that growth is not going to go unchecked. As Kim said, we will be making sure that there's enough water for people to operate without sacrificing it to the future.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like you're being flexible enough when in the news now they're talking about, severe cutbacks, and what you're not going to mess around with it for another 5 years or something. I mean, when something like this comes up, it seems like there needs to be an adjustment.
Oh, well, and you're right. There are adjustments through the water contingency plan, which is a tiered structure where if we're at a certain, if it's called, and I don't want to, I know it's in the story map, but also in our infrastructure study, as they call down the, we have to conserve this much, and this much, and I apologize, I don't have the criteria, that we do certain things as we move forward. And so it's not just one solution, but we do slowly 5%, 10%, no washing your cars. So we do have in the water management plan, succession of what needs to be done. And as Colin mentioned, the projects that come in have to show that we have water availability. So if it does get to a point sometime in the future that there has to be a decision on water availability, they'll go through those steps and the water department will make that decision at the end of the day. So it's not like they just go, they're unchecked.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor that, but I mean, it seems to me that the 175,000 of us would rather be able to keep our lawns and wash our cars as opposed to having more residents.
Right.
I think
I
a
hear you.
nice, a good thing to mention is that new housing has to achieve higher water conservation standards. And also generally, I think a lot of the new housing is built with less land that needs irrigation, newer appliances that require less water. So I think new growth will have less of a footprint than traditional development. But yes, there is that conflict between existing residents and future residents coming in and the rationing that happens in between.
Can I ask another question?
Please do.
So over 50% of the respondents felt that they could not influence city policy. What kind of input did we have in drawing up the new zoning map? And who's responsible for proposing these changes to the map? For example, changing so much of the dairy properties to warehousing.
So it has the adjustments to the land use plan was through a series of group conversation and consultation, moving through the different sectors of the community. The reason why the dairy is changing is twofold. Number one, it's privately owned properties. Number two is that a lot of dairies are moving out of the region due to economics. And also we had long-term family farms that are transitioning now. The younger individuals no longer want to farm. And so they're moving out of the farming business. With that said, those folks that own those properties were also looking at what else could we do with our land. We also are a growing city that has to ensure that we make our housing requirements for capacity for the 2030, 2050 land use plan. And that's driven by the SCAG, Southern California Association of Governments, allocation of housing share, as well as looking at the overall balance of goods movement that runs through the city of Ontario and the international airport. Those were all considerations about hazards next to airports, putting industrial. Down south, it's been planned as us as a city to grow and to be economic and viable is to look at the land that's transitioning because farming is moving out. This is like the hole in the donut for putting housing and making it a viable community in the future.
And Kim, maybe it's good to mention that the update that we're doing now is really an incremental update
Mhm.
of the area south of Riverside Drive, where it had previously been identified. And I think even before the last time it was updated, the land was still identified long-term to transition away from agriculture and to conventional development.
Yes, in 2010, correct. Thank you, Colin.
I
Kim?
see, Raymond, you
Yes.
have remuted yourself. So I think there's a.
Was that Rudy? I think
Yes.
Rudy had something to say.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Rudy.
Yeah, I apologize. Rudy Zeld, I'm planning director. Yeah, because I wanna just piggyback on that question, because it's a good question that we get a lot. When you look at the map that's before you, and the question was why are we putting industrial and taking it, and removing farmland. There's a couple of things that I think that I want to be very clear is that the city of Ontario has a right to farm ordinance. So in the Ontario Ranch area, you can farm for as long as you want, regardless of the zoning of the property, whether it's industrial, commercial, or residential. The area that you see on the south there, that's a purple, the reason why that's going industrial is because the impacts from the Chino Airport. There's an approach there that has impacts, so residential is not conducive there. And so it makes sense to put some of that industrial along the south side, more of the light industrial. And then as you move closer to eucalyptus, where you see the business park, kind of less intensive. And that's why that industrial is there. But in terms of the farmlands and agriculture, the city, when we annexed this area, 97, we agreed to a right to farm ordinance, which allows farmers or anyone who wants to continue to have agriculture to do farming can do so. And so I know that there's a lot of things been said on social media that the city's going in and removing a lot of this industrial or agriculture land, but that's not what we're doing. And so I wanted to kind of clarify that a little bit. And when you look at kind of the area down there, we are going to be building a lot of residential. As Kim mentioned, we do have some numbers that we have to hit for our housing numbers. And so we are intensifying certain areas for residential. But in terms of the industrial, part of the reason is because of the impacts from the Chino Airport. So I wanted to just kind of be very clear on that. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we can move to some comments and questions from Elizabeth. Elizabeth, go ahead and raise your hand if you want to talk, or I am Maria. Yeah, go ahead and raise your hand if you want to talk. If not, I will go ahead and state the comments and the questions. First was, I congratulate the City of Ontario for the great work they're doing in building safer streets. However, the growth of the city is producing an increase in the pedestrian and bicycle accidents. And so then I think that leads to her first question out of two so far. I am very concerned about the increase in vehicles and the lack of education about roads and pedestrian uses. Is the city going to work on policies or stricter regulations to improve this? So somewhat related, but Kim, I toss it to you for those questions.
So we have been looking at different roadways and safety, and part of our policy plan is we have mobility and looking more strategically at safe streets, complete streets. So hopefully that will address some of that on a broad scale. We're also looking at understanding how we can improve traffic flows, which is part of the complete streets package as well.
And then another question. In February, a resolution was approved declaring February the month of speed awareness. How can the city work to create a culture of awareness? Which I think somewhat piggybacks onto your question, but.
Outreach is always something we're working on, and our transportation sector or section, we are trying to do promotional about safety as well. We have a new communications division we're working with as well to promote safe streets. We had 2 years ago a Go Human event. I believe it was 2 years ago where we reduced lanes on Euclid and put bikes on there. And for that, we also had a safety portion of it about bike safety and how we can make at least Euclid a safer street. So for us, it's a matter of organizing more so after the pandemic. We're getting back up to speed. That would be one thing on doing outreach, and also coming up with a more robust promotional approach to safe streets. And we're constantly looking at it, but I think now that we're up and running at full bore, we will be back into promoting the safe streets.
And then there will be shortly a story map coming on mobility. So check that. We have kind of a draft ready. Kim, let me know if you want me to share what we have. If not, I would encourage folks to go to the website and see the link, and it will be similar to these other story maps we have here. And if not, if depending on what you say, Kim, Brian has a question from Tara that he can read out.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so she was just wondering if we are addressing carbon emissions in the plan.
Yes, we are, and we are addressing carbon emissions in the plan from a policy standpoint on ensuring that we have policies in the safety element, and also mobility, reducing, trips as much as possible with active transportation, from bike paths to moving people around in buses in our BRT system. We talk about mobility that way. We also have the climate action plan. That's also a part of the project for the Ontario plan. And that will address the climate, the GHG, greenhouse gas emissions. And it will also address where we were and where we're going in 2030 to meet the 2030 goal and the 2050 goal, year 2050 goal. As of right now, the city had the initial climate action plan completed in 2014, and we've been working through it, and it just horizoned. We ended our 10-year cycle for the 2020 climate action plan, and we hit the target of 30% below 2020 emissions. So we're doing quite well from that standpoint. The updates to the climate action plan will have more mitigation measures that will include, incorporating more electric vehicles, doing charging stations, making residential homes more efficient, as well as looking at carbon sink, which is planting trees and actually capturing the carbon in our trees. As we plant more trees, they'll be the lungs of our city. So from the standpoint of capturing carbon and talking about carbon, we do have a variety of methods and ways of capturing it. And it's expressed through the policies in the general plan or the policy plan, as well as our update to our climate action plan.
And then Tara, if you want to continue to ask other questions or speak on the matter, please raise your hand or let us know in the chat. Otherwise, we have a question from Raymond that he'd like to ask regarding the industrial lands around eucalyptus.
Okay.
We'll try and bring up the map again.
Okay.
So let me
Oh, one other thing, Tara, just for notes, we're going to have a climate action plan story map. And that'll talk to, that will identify the emissions and what we've done to date to reduce carbon emissions. So please keep your eyes open on our website or look because it should be up in the next week or so. Okay, Raymond, I thank you for your patience.
No problem. I wanted to, I thought I'd maybe talk to Mr. Zeldin, but probably you can answer this question. In this 2050 zoning map, it appears to me that the intention is that the industrial will stay south of eucalyptus. Is that the way you read it, or do you think there might be some warehouses north of that?
As we're moving through this process, everything at this point is south of eucalyptus. And there's one thing, the caveat why it's important is that the truck route is on Merle. So all our trucks on industrial will go down south and then go along Merle to catch, to go to the freeway. So that's why it's important that we try to hold that line. But as of right now, the land use plan, we're moving through it as we see it. And that's why we're doing it, is to make sure not only it addresses the airport, Chino Airport areas, we don't want to put houses next to that, but also it addresses truck routes and making sure that those trucks are, efficiently moving to the freeways or to areas outside the city.
Hey, Kim.
Yes, Rudy.
Yeah, I would just add to that too. I think, from a land use standpoint, as we move forward, I think it's very critical for us to really hold that line at eucalyptus, because you have the great park, you have the mixed use areas there, you have medium density, low density residential, and as we move into the future, I think it's something that we're really going to have to really look at for quality of life. And right now that line is eucalyptus. But that's a great question, because, the value of industrial land today is just outrageous. And every property in the cities, everybody wants to zone it to industrial because they want to be able to make a profit. But for us, it's about quality of life. It's about the balance. And this plan that you see before you is that balance. Is really looking at, how do we balance these land uses? And for us, especially the industrial, it makes sense here because of the airport. Going north of eucalyptus does not make sense for us because of a variety of reasons, truck routes, but it impacts to the quality of life. I think is important and something that we have to look at as today and as we move forward. Thank you.
Yeah, that helps. I noticed this color, kind of a dark purple, is called mixed use. Are warehouses allowed in mixed use or not?
No, they are
Okay.
not.
All right. Well, that's really what I was wondering. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Colin, Brian, anyone else that, please, if you have any other questions, I don't want to run over. If
We
I
have
know.
another comment from Elizabeth that I'll read out. It says, "Thank you. I'm part of a Safe Routes to School community group. We appreciate what is being done. However, we realize there is a great lack of road and pedestrian education. Although the streets are improving a lot, the problem is that the road regulations are not being respected." So echoing some comments that we heard, I believe, from Marta.
Okay, thank you. That's, that's a common thread we're trying to tackle here. It's not only road safety, but the education. And I know we have different sectors that go out. Police department does bike safety program and other, just safety in general. But we got to slow down people, and that's always a tough one. Okay, anything else?
I'm not
Colin?
seeing any comments coming through. Brian, I don't know if you had any additional comments coming through? I'm seeing a shaking of heads. No, nobody's raising their hand. So we will be holding another one of these, but otherwise, at least two more meetings, one virtual and one in person. So it's not too late to ask your questions later on, and you can always feel free to contact the city. But I'll turn it back over to Kim.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Brian. We really appreciate you taking your time of your busy schedule this evening. As Colin mentioned, our next one will be on May 26th. It'll be another virtual one, but at that one, we will have released the environmental document. So please, it will be posted on our website and available at the city as you wish, if you would want to read it. So that'll be part of our next conversation. We'll be able to review that a little bit more in depth, as well as a policy plan, and run through some policies. And then our last online meeting or open house will be in person on June 30th. So please mark your calendars. It'll be here at City Hall in the community room across from the City Hall chambers, council chambers. With that, we really appreciate your time and your comments. They're all documented, and we'll revisit them and see how we can improve our outreach, and also at the same time make sure that